From The Light from the Inside in Redlands, California, I am Leo Fontes with my first podcast series titled The Footsteps of My Life. If you have not had a chance to hear episodes 1, 2, and 3, I highly encourage you to hear those first, as my guests and I will be referencing comments made within them during this episode. My Light of the World Church guests on today's show are Sister Loana Hernandez and her brother Ezekiel Martinez, and they share their memories of what life was like in their home prior to the change that the doctrine and teachings that exist in the Light of the World Church would bring for them. Be sure to listen through to the end to hear how God worked in their lives and how the Light of the World Church impacted them in such beautiful ways. Welcome back to another episode of The Light from the Inside, a podcast show dedicated to sharing conversations and testimonials of personal and spiritual life-changing experiences and triumphs from active members within the Light of the World Church. I'm your host, Leo Fontes, and on today's show, I have two guests for you, Sister Loana Martinez Jr. and Brother, is it Ezequiel or Ezekiel? Brother,
I take Ezekiel.
Ezekiel, okay. Brother Ezekiel Martinez, who both will be sharing how the Light of the World Church and its doctrine has impacted their lives as a follow-up to what their parents shared in episodes 1, 2, and 3. So whichever platform you're listening to this episode, I invite you to subscribe and follow The Light from the Inside, which is the podcast, and also we'll be uploading YouTube, Light and Fortitude Productions, another Facebook and YouTube platform that we use. And I welcome any comments, questions, and reviews you'd like to share and leave for us. To begin, I have, again, the children of Brother Isaiah and Sister Loana Martinez from previous conversations with Brother Isaiah and his wife. Brother Isaiah was born in the Light of the World Church. He strayed away twice in his younger age and found his companion and wife. And I'm just going to mention some things that they encountered in his distancing away from the Light of the World Church, to include gangs, drugs, overdoses, arrests, family problems, pain, suffering, separation, etc., etc. It wasn't until they embraced the doctrine found in the Light of the World Church that their lives, their marriage, and even their children, as the two that are here with us on the show today, were able to be saved. So with that, Sister Loana, I want to throw the first question out to you. What do you remember feeling? What emotions or thoughts were you experiencing prior to coming to the knowledge of the existence of the Light of the World Church?
So I think a lot of people, they don't really realize, like, because I was 14, and well, obviously before that too, prior, on and off, my dad was in jail since I was like 15, and then he was doing drugs and things like that. Obviously, like, you're aware of all those things, and it's not something pleasant to go through. And I remember before I went to church, I just felt so lonely. Like, I really did. And it sounds crazy because you think, like, you're 14 years old, like you're a teenager, you're really kind of starting, and you would think that you wouldn't feel like so sad, like depressed and whatnot.
Right.
And I feel like I just felt so lonely and like I needed something and I just didn't know what it was, and I just felt I felt just in a desperation, to find something, because I remember one thing that I really remember is when I seen my dad and he overdosed, and then the hospital came to, they like the paramedics came and things like that. They took him out of the house and they took him to the hospital. And I remember I just going to my room and I was just crying, like, and there was nothing else I could do,
Yeah.
and I felt so hopeless. I didn't know how to pray. I didn't know how to do anything, and so, like, going back to that, I'm like, man, how sad that was, because I didn't know, like, that there was a God that I could go to and I could pray to. I didn't even know how to pray, or anything.
Right.
So I just felt so sad. And I remember my grandparents, they would always like invite us to church, but I was just kind of like, I don't know, cause, I was just like, I just felt like, I don't know. I was like, I don't want to wear skirts and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was just, I don't know. That was just my, my thing. I was like, I don't know if I want to, like commit. I thought like, just because I went to go visit, I had to commit,
Okay.
And, that wasn't the case. You don't have to commit. Like you just, if you want to just go and visit,
Right.
And, when I went to church, that's when I started feeling a lot better, So I just felt like, with prior, like what you asked me, what did I feel prior to that? I felt lonely. I felt like I just didn't have nothing or anyone, and I was searching for something and I didn't know what. And I just felt like I need something. Nothing is helping me, like, and I can't do anything about what's going on with my parents, because they would fight too and all that stuff because, the whole drugs and just everything they went through personally.
Yeah.
And it just felt like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like extreme sadness,
Yeah. You say at 14, you felt lonely. Who else was in the home that besides their presence, you still felt that loneliness, that emptiness? Was it just your mom and dad and yourself, or did you have younger or older siblings at that time also?
Yeah, I have 3 younger brothers. So we're all like 1 year apart. And I feel like
they were there.
Yeah. We all seen everything.
Okay.
I think my younger brothers, they don't really remember like a whole lot. Like Ezekiel, he's more like he'll remember like bits and pieces. But I think maybe because I was older, I remember every single thing.
Right.
And I'm just like, it was a lot,
Yeah. Well, you'd be amazed too. I mean, I remember. I have a very bad memory, but still at the age of 5, I can remember different sporadic things at the age of 5. I can't imagine something painful and impactful, and stressful, even at that young age. But I guess at the same time, that's something also that you can block out, because of the pain and suffering. And God pay you for sharing that, because I imagine that, with the things that this world has to offer, there's undoubtedly many that find themselves in a similar situation. Yeah. So it's through this podcast that, we want to get to how the church has impacted your life, to be able to show, and share how there is hope, for anyone that hears this message. There is hope, though at that young age, a lot of times people don't realize it. Like you're saying, you experience, you didn't know where to go. You didn't know where to run. You didn't know how to feel that emptiness, that void. But, thanks to God, there was a plan in store for you.
Amen.
Brother Ezekiel, what age were you when you came to the church?
I was about 10, 11.
10, 11. Okay.
For me, a lot of my memories kind of start there. I can remember us starting to go to church.
Okay.
Who I met, how I felt at the time going to church. It was a lot different. I was more introverted, so I can remember bits and pieces of like that incident that my sister talked about. I can remember bits and pieces of that.
Yeah.
But to me, being introverted, I can kind of like block that kind of stuff out, and more focus on what was at the time.
Right.
Like, I had school at the time, and I'm just going to focus on work or classes or studying, and that was able to kind of shield me from a lot of the things that was happening at the time, that I didn't have to worry about, even though there were some serious things happening.
Yeah. That was your way of dealing with the pain that was obviously there.
Yeah.
That you didn't know other way how to deal with it. So your mother shared with me that your grandfather was out knocking on doors when he coincidentally knocked on the apartment door of your mom's mom. No, is that right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, my mom's mom.
Your mom's mom. And your dad was there.
Mm-hmm.
And his father knocked on your mom's apartment door.
Yes.
Would you describe that as a coincidence? Because he was out evangelizing, witnessing, as we say, giving testimony of, or inviting to the Light of the World Church there in Santa Maria.
I guess I wouldn't call that coincidence at that point.
Because he didn't know where he was.
No,
he didn't know he was knocking on.
Yeah,
not at all.
Right.
I think that I firmly believe that everything happens for a reason. Like we do missionary work, my brother and I think he can say the same thing as to, we run into people and they're going through a hard time, like a really hard time, and it usually always happens, and then that's how we start inviting them to, like, that there is a way out and there is something that can help you. And it's like, it just so happened that they were having, like, it's not that it just so happened, it's just,
right.
It's how God speaks to us, and it's beautiful to see that, we're always being looked after,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's what I wanted to tease out of you both, because as we very well know, God has a plan, for all of us. Yeah. And in his plan, we can say that might have been the method that he used to, get that message inside that door, inside that home. Brother Ezekiel, I wanted to ask you then how, sure. How has the church, the Light of the World Church, and its doctrine impacted you, your life? What is your life dedicated to now? And where is it that you will soon be going, from what I heard from your father?
I think that the teachings and the doctrine of the church, of course, as given to us by the Apostle Jesus Christ, made the world of difference for me. Getting into the church, 10, 11, and being a person who's interested in learning, understanding what it is that's going on and why things are the way they are. I remember they used to hold little prayer sessions in front of our house.
Right.
And me and my brothers would go. They'd give out free food. They'd talk about the Bible a little bit.
Okay.
And we got to experience something, that even though it wasn't our faith, it was kind of an introduction to what God is.
Right.
And I think in that point, it started to stay on the mind, I think, a little bit, like that there could be something, more
right
than a life that's, go to school, hang out with your friends, and go do whatever silly things you do as kids.
Right.
I was kind of a troublemaker as a young person, and I don't think it really changed when I started going to church. I think it changed when I started understanding more, and around about 14, when we get presented, and after that, I started to understand more about what the church was, more than it just being a people gathered together for prayer meetings. It's something for salvation. I think that started to change how I saw myself. Like, oh, well, I'm doing all these things with my friends, and we're doing silly things. We're messing around. We're doing things that may not be acceptable. And I'm doing all these things, but when I go to church, they're telling me to do something different. They're telling me to do the opposite. And they're telling me to find, a love for God, a love for people, a love for the things in the best possible way, how to live your life.
Right.
And I think that is probably the biggest impact that the church had for me, is changing me from what very well could be, a delinquent person, to someone who understands more, who's more, you could say, receptive to or interactive maybe with other people in society.
Right.
Like I probably wouldn't be a person who's willing to talk to you about the gospel or willing to help a person in need, or to give them advice if
Right.
it wasn't for the teachings that I had received in church.
Right. So it sounds like a new direction is where the doctrine, where the church pointed you once that understanding, like you said, once that understanding came. Because prior to that, it's just going to church, singing songs, kneeling down to pray, sitting down to hear the Bible, talk. But once the understanding comes, it's literally life changing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It has its effects, and it shows that change that the Lord does in our heart. It shows externally in our lives.
Right.
So your mother also said, Brother Ezekiel, that she had no idea that you would be choosing the path that you chose, not just staying in the church and persevering on your own, volition, but you went a step further.
For me, it became more clear the more I went to church, and I'm thankful to the man of God for the instruction he gave to the church. When I first went into church, it was just a place that, okay, well, I have to go there because my family is going there.
Yeah.
And they're going there, and all my family's going there, my brothers and sisters going there. And I have to go along with my parents. I can't be alone at the house, or
Right.
with my grandparents, I have to go with them.
As a minor.
Yeah, as a minor. as someone who can't live alone at the age of 10, 11, 12.
Right.
But I think that the big change happened definitely at the era when the man of God sent, I believe it was the Brother Lee Minimum.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't a person who understood Spanish. That was my big issue.
Yeah.
That's all they spoke in the church.
Right.
Every prayer, every day, it's all Spanish. Sunday school's in Spanish.
Yeah.
And there was very few people to translate. So I think having it in English was a big eye opener. Like, oh, this is what they're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what they're teaching.
Yeah.
This is why they go here every day. They don't just go here to spend time an hour away from everybody else.
Yeah.
They're learning something here.
Yeah. That language barrier is exactly that, a barrier of understanding. Yeah.
True.
Me and my family, same thing. And so many others, once again, like you said, once the understanding was there, that seed starts to germinate, and changes.
Right.
So I'm trying to squeeze out of you that you are now serving in the battalion,
Yes.
but you're not saying it.
Okay, sorry. Because I wanted to get to what kind of inspired me was
Okay.
At the time, just entering into the church. I remember in the Santa Maria church, one of the brothers invited me to go preaching with them on a Saturday. And that was new for me, and I thought, hey, why not? I'll go with the brother.
How old were you at that time?
I think I was 13, 14, or 15. It was between that time period. I can't remember exactly the pinpoint age. I remember how it happened. Yeah. How we went to a few buildings that were nearby the church. They knocked on the doors. They talked to the brother who was taking me with them. He drove us around. They talked to some people who were out on their porch. I remember him having a discussion with somebody about the Virgin Mary, and I thought it was interesting to see what they were discussing.
Yeah.
And afterwards, we had we went to go eat something, a fast food place, and to me it started something like, well, this is interesting that they're so passionate about what they're discussing.
Yeah,
they have such a passion for what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not just that they're like discussing the weather.
Right.
It's something important to each of them.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, when even at school it started to poke into me. Like, we were having a discussion at a group table. I think this was around 7th grade. I was in junior high at the time. We were having a discussion at our group table, and I don't know how it got there, but somebody mentioned God. And we were 4 kids with vastly different views about what God was. One said, oh, well, God is Jesus. God is the Holy Trinity. One said, no. God is the mother, God, Mary.
Right.
Very, very important. And everybody on different kind of corners of what God was or who God was.
Yeah.
We were all just kids.
Right.
And to me, that also kind of sparked my interest. And so when I went to South Carolina and moved over there, I started to go on Saturdays preaching with the brothers and the sisters there. We went to different places, and it started to interest me more and more, because where I came from was a place that didn't really speak any English. They didn't really express any of the doctrine in English.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came to me, I understood, and my eyes were opened, and I started to say, oh, this is what they're teaching, and I like what they're teaching, and what they're teaching is correct. If I read it in the scriptures, it's here, and it's right there on the paper, and I understand it. From that point, I was like, well, how many more people are there like me who aren't going to hear this message because it's in Spanish, because it's coming from someone who may even just look Hispanic and they don't want to talk to them.
Right.
And it kind of, for me, was like, well, I want to discuss those things. I want to have those passionate conversations and tell people about what it is that they're preaching here. And that's kind of what I started to do in South Carolina.
Okay.
Going Saturdays to the labor, going out preaching door to door, evangelizing.
Right.
And maybe it's not like a huge commitment.
Yeah.
But I think that if you were looking at that, you might say, well, maybe he has an interest for the things.
Well, it is a big step. I mean, you're basically leaving behind everything.
Yeah.
You're walking away from your family. You're walking away from everything just to be of use and of service to, like you said, just share the message, dedicate your life to sharing the message of the doctrine of Jesus Christ, what we've learned through the apostle of the Lord in more than one era.
I didn't, at the time when I first signed up, I was kind of on the fence about it a little bit. My sister kind of talked me into it a little bit more. She's like, this is what you already do, like just go do it. And I wanted to try it out for maybe a year or two and come back.
Yeah.
And then, maybe find out what I want to do, how I want to spend the rest of my life. Because I was already looking at, maybe there's a community college over here in South Carolina, and they have a community college that's not too far away. Maybe I'll look into the classes there. Mm. And it came about, the invitation came right about at that time when I was applying and when I was trying to find the classes I want to get into. And I was like, well, I spend a lot of time going out, preaching. I want to see what it's like, for in that environment, in a different environment, in an environment where that's what their main focus is.
Right.
And when we went out, I remember hearing a brother give testimony. I don't remember which brother it was, but he said that he had experienced something similar, that when he went out, it was maybe difficult for him. But when his parents asked him about it, how was it? He said, I like the suffering. Mm. Like I'm willing to endure it. I like how there's a better service to be given.
Yeah.
I think that was more born in me. And that's why 4 years later, I'm here. Still here, and I don't plan to leave.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so, where are you going soon?
It's
tell us.
They're still
tell us.
kind of okay. They're still working it out, but they're trying to get all the visas and everything in order. I think the vaccination things, COVID era is very difficult, but they wanted to send me to Sao Tome in Africa, right off the coast of Gabon, which is a huge coincidence. My sister was actually here in Hartford, and they sent her to Gabon.
Oh wow!
So they're from here. They're sending me to Sao Tome in Sao Tome and Principe, and they're off the coast of Africa there.
Well, that's a beautiful growing labor too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I see some of the photos sometimes that come out of the members and the souls that are listening in Africa, and just like, wow, that's beautiful.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Sister Loana, you're in Bismarck, North Dakota?
Yes, I am.
And what are you doing over there?
My husband and I are preaching. We're doing missionary work down there. It's been amazing. I love it. Every place that we've been to has a different, like a different light to it, and it takes a while. Sometimes in the place that you're in, it takes a while to find that like little spark that's in there, but it's amazing. I mean, I don't know if I'm biased to it because, my son was born there. So I really but it's a really great town. People are super nice. It's the Midwest. So it's just like everyone's like really cool and super nice and really friendly. And, in Africa it was just, it was amazing. I miss it all the time. I look at the pictures and I almost want to cry because I miss it.
How long were you there?
We were there for like a year.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were supposed to be there longer, but since I got pregnant, we had to come back.
Okay.
And there's just so much to the souls there are just so willing to hear the word of God. And they're just so willing to, it's just like life is so much different there, It's like a whole new meaning because whenever we're here in the States, it's like, we're always on the go, we're always like, go, work, trying to like find our goals or reach a success or whatnot, and over there, it's just so much more simpler. People are actually just trying to survive day by day. It's just I learned so much there,
Yeah. I want to go back to something your father shared, going back to those dark years. He said that you told him something that obviously was expressed in your pain and what you were going through. Something along the lines that if he didn't leave that was it. Were you? I could only imagine you just didn't want to, like you said, you were looking for a way to end that suffering that you were going through.
I think I was just so frustrated with the fact that so many years, I don't know if it's just, I don't know what it is. Like when you grow up with a parent that has struggled with addiction and things like that, you live another life, and you have problems all the time. Like, everyone has something they deal with, no family's perfect. Everyone has their own struggles. Right. But like whenever you're dealing with someone who's a drug addict, it's a whole nother ballgame. And when you've been dealing with that for such a long time, and it's like whatever you could remember ever since you were small, you're just kind of like, there comes a point where you're just like, is this going to continue? Like I keep going forward, but I keep looking back because I'm like, is my dad going to be okay? Is he going to, is my mom going to be okay? Because obviously they're married, like what's going to happen. And, my mom mentioned, like she did, we would always be like, we don't want you to get a divorce. We were like little, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And
you don't really know what it's like when you have like so much turmoil in your marriage until you actually married yourself. Like I think to myself, and I'm like, why did I ever tell my mom that, because, when you're in a marriage, then you start to understand like, wow, this, like everything she went through was just so horrible and she should have left. But because she was listening to what we were saying and stuff like that. And I just, just thinking of all that, I was just like, I am literally done. And I feel like there's nothing that is nothing or no one that's going to stop him from trying to stop doing this, Yeah. It was like, it was just disappointment after disappointment. Like, it would be like good. And then back,
Yeah.
And it was just, I sometimes I talk to the youth too, in where I'm at. And I'm just like, I grew up living with like, whenever I would open the thing to get the cupboard to get the utensils and stuff, there was like bent spoons and all this stuff, and that was like something that, is just like normal to me, but it wasn't normal. It's not normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not people don't have bent spoons and all this stuff. And it's just like, I think I'm just the type of person that I like to solve the problem,
Yeah.
And, I just was like, this is a definite problem and you're not really solving it, and it took him a long time, even when he was in church. I think a lot of people, they don't really understand that even when you get baptized, right? And then even when you get baptized, no matter what, you're still going to have struggles, that's just life.
Yes.
But the beauty of being baptized and now having a communion with God is the fact that you have the communion of God, and you can go to him instead of, like I told you, when I was younger, when I was 14 and I was crying and everything, and I felt that sadness, I didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go. I felt the desperation, I could have, it's just like it's such a sadness that you almost want to just stop living, because of all the things you're going through as a kid, and it's just like, what's the point? And, but whenever you're baptized, you start to realize there is a God, he listens to me, and I need to pray to God, because no one's going to help, no one could change someone, only God can.
Right.
And I was just like, honestly, I don't think I would change the timing of anything, because I think that everything was supposed to happen how it did.
Yeah.
But I just, at that moment, I was just fed up and done. I was like, no, and I'm like, I know that maybe I know that he loved me, you know what I mean? And to me, he was, a lot of people that have parents, because I have friends that, they had parents too, and cousins too, that their parents, dealt with drug addiction, and they're not close to their parents, or whatever, the parent that was, and usually that's how it goes, because it's so hard. It's so hard to forgive. It's so hard to let go of the past. It's so hard to do all of those things. It is,
to get hurt over and over again.
Yes. It's something normal, but I strongly believe, that me being in church really helped me to forgive that. And also my mom, she was just always like, you need to respect your dad, no matter who he is or whatnot, basically telling us, everyone has problems. I'm not saying to forgive him, or, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying, think about it, don't, when you can't forgive someone, it's really just hurting yourself, when you can't let go of something, you're just hurting yourself. And so it's just one of those things that I feel, my mom was very, very detrimental in that aspect. And, that we always had to respect my dad, and, no matter who he was and things like that. And, I don't know, brother, I have this compassion for people that go through an addiction, especially drugs, because I lived with someone like that. I know that it's not easy. It took him so long to let go of all that, and I feel like, I was at my wit's end with everything. And I was just like, that's why I told him what I said. I was like, maybe, cause I told him I think I had told him something that I just, I wasn't really going to want to communicate with him anymore if he was going to continue to do these things. And, I've never said that before. I was always his number one supporter.
Yeah.
I was always the one by his side. I was always like, no, my dad's going to change. He's going to change. He's going to change. And I think when he's seen that the person that was supporting him, that was always like, you're going to change, you could do this, his supporter saying I'm going to leave because you're, I'm not going to talk to you rather, then he was like, okay, obviously it wasn't the breaking point of, but I think it made him think about what he was doing a little bit more,
Yeah. I mean, there's just that short while where you're sharing that, there's so many things I thought of,
Yeah.
But one of the things was where he shared that part of the reason why he was doing that was because he said he felt a big emptiness in his heart too, and in his life that led him to seek, so he's seeking the drugs to fill an emptiness. You're 14 years old, not knowing how to fill the emptiness and rid yourself of that situation, of those problems. But eventually, even as you said, he struggled with that even while coming back to the church. Eventually, obviously, the doctrine has an effect. Hearing the word of God, it has an effect. And the faith starts to grow. The understanding, like Brother Ezekiel said, starts to expand. And once that understanding arrives, it changes your life. It changed your life, changed your brother's life, changed your mom and dad's life. And what could have gone in all sorts of directions. It's like I was telling your mom, now you all, from what I hear, are, even though you're much more further physically. You're much more united, in your beliefs and what makes you happy in life and your goals. And that's pretty much sums up what this podcast is for, to be able to share how the Light of the World Church has impacted our lives, because there's a lot of content out there in the internet that people that don't know us and want to find out more, or because they've heard of us or they learned of us and they search the internet. Sometimes it's, there's a lot of good and bad content out there. And I wanted to create this platform so that those interested in the Light of the World Church that want to know more about us will be able to hear it firsthand from us as members inside the Light of the World, what life is like in the Light of the World Church, how the doctrine has impacted us, how the teachings we receive from the apostles of the Lord, whether it was back in Brother Samuel Joaquin's time or now in this era of Brother Nason Joaquin, how their teachings and example have impacted our lives, our families, our children, our youth, to where there's this beautiful change, all across the board. And it's like you said, there'll always be those that struggle, even within the church. But it's when that understanding comes to us as we begin to age, whether it's at you're 14, 15 years old or later on, that's when we see that beautiful change that the Lord wants to give each and every one of us. I mean, if we look at Scripture, the Bible says that it's His desire that all mankind come to the knowledge of the truth. And we know coming to that truth is where our soul's going to find rest, which is what He wants for everyone. So this is just a way that we're trying to collaborate and reach out to those who want to get to know a little bit more about the Light of the World Church. For that, we invite our listeners to visit us at any daily worship service. Right now, during the pandemic, every location, I guess, is different. But outside of the pandemic, our prayers are daily, 365 days a year at 5 a.m., 9 a.m., 6 p.m. Welcome to leave a message or comment. Any Light of the World listeners that are tuning in, you're welcome to contact me if you want to share your testimony and how the church and its doctrine has impacted your life. Other than that, I'd like to thank you for listening to this podcast and say to you now that may the Lord reward you and bless you for having done so, because the goal of these conversations is to allow you to hear, as I said, firsthand directly from members of the Light of the World Church, how the doctrine has impacted and changed our life. I invite you to listen to the next episode, number 5, where I will have Brother Ezra Madrid, where he will share his testimony, how he also was a member born in the church. He happens to be my brother-in-law, but he also, as your father, strayed away at a young age just because of a lack of understanding. I want to go back to that language barrier. That language barrier was a big thing. When it created that wall where that understanding could not penetrate our minds and our hearts. And in his straying away from the path of the Lord, he ended up doing quite a few years in prison. And recently, he completed that time and perhaps like your father, perhaps he struggled a bit at the beginning, but he's still here. And I'd like to invite the listeners to tune in for that episode that will be forthcoming. And you'll be able to hear how the doctrine has impacted his life. Again, once that understanding, he embraced it and how the Lord has blessed him. With that being said, Brother Ezekiel, Sister Loana, God pay you for allowing me this time and sharing your testimonies. I am the executive producer of this, The Footsteps of My Life, which it's a series that I'm inviting you all to look back at the footsteps of your life. Like the song says in Spanish, it's que grato es llevar en el alma un recuerdo.
Amen.
How beautiful it is to look back and remember where the Lord brought us from, where He found us, where He lifted us up from, and where He brought us. And it's all beautiful.
This is really great, brother. I really think this is amazing what you're doing, because it's like a way of people finding out, like, it's like what you're like inviting them into, like the podcast, but also inviting them to church, you know, because it's like another way, you know, to the, you know, there's different means to do it, you know?
Yeah. I remember the Servant Lord Brother Samuel saying, you know, we need to look for creative ways to lure the souls, you know, to invite them.
There's a lot of beautiful things to be talked about, and that this is a great way to say it, you know?
All we like to do is share what we've learned from the doctrine of the light that exists in the Light of the World Church as preached by the Apostle of the Lord in this era, our brother Nason Joaquin Garcia. From the city of Redlands, California, San Bernardino, California, the brothers and sisters here, we send our greeting to you both, and we will be praying for you and everyone else that is helping the Apostle of the Lord and the church and spreading this message. May the Lord bless you all and keep us all faithfully growing, prospering in this path.
Amen. We will all pray for each other because we all need it.
Amen.
Amen.
For more great content, visit TLOTW.org, and may God bless you for hearing this message.